Our $1,500 DSM is pretty awesome, but here's the thing. It was way more expensive than 1,500 bucks. The car itself did cost 1,500 bucks, but it was in St. Louis, 600 miles away, and needed a bunch of parts to drive home, and then on the drive home, it blew up. So the question remains, how much did it cost to get the car where it is now, and was it a good deal? We're gonna talk about that today. But first, I wanna fix a few things. There's some coolant leaks, I need to add a coolant sensor, and I've got a special sauce for the transmission. Totally stripped out. Are you kidding me? So this is the special sauce. This is Valvoline Synchromesh manual transmission fluid. It's a manual transmission fluid that is specifically designed to help synchros do their job. And obviously this transmission has two synchros not wanting to do their job. So hopefully this fixes it. I'm doubtful, but it can't hurt. This thing sounds awesome. It went from sounding like it's about to blow up to sounding like a brand new motor. I'll take it. It also looks like we fixed our coolant leaks. Nothing dripping. Gonna let it reach operating temp, open the thermostat, bleed it, and then we can see if that new trans fluid did anything. That's a great start. It's not even warm, it's already grinding. I mean, obviously, if this helps, it's still only patching the issue. I wonder how cheap a used two-wheel drive transmission is. Yeah, nope. Doesn't like that, that's for sure. Shifter bushings. How did I think shifter bushings would cause a transmission grind? If I shift slowly, it's fine, but yeah, I don't know. This thing does still drive really nicely, and the motor feels really healthy. I know you guys want to see me rip on it, and I'm going to, but I'm getting a wideband O2 sensor gauge before I do that, just because I don't want this thing blowing up again. It's better safe than sorry. This thing has an aftermarket turbo, a bunch of aftermarket parts, but it's got a stock tune and a stock ECU, so I don't necessarily trust it. I will now forever be paranoid of that gauge. But it's nice. It might just be my imagination, but yeah, okay. I think it's just my imagination. I was gonna say, I think it's shifting a little better. Maybe it just has to have a few miles on it to do its thing, you know? That makes sense, right? So, how much did this car actually cost? I'm calling it the $1,500 DSM because I bought the car for $1,500, but that's not how much it cost to get it back to Georgia running and driving as it is now. I went through my bank account, collected all the sad data, and here we are. Now, I flew all the way to St. Louis to fix the car, repair it, and attempt to drive it home because I thought it was a really good deal. And I thought it would be fun and make good videos, which I think we can hopefully both agree it did. I also thought at the time that flying to St. Louis, repairing the car, and driving it back would be the cheapest option to get it home. So let's start at the beginning. To get to St. Louis, I had to buy 2 plane tickets, one for Hunter and one for me. Those 2 plane tickets together were $330.80. But I also had a checked bag full of tools, parts, and other stuff for this car. That was an additional 30 bucks. When we were thinking about flying to St. Louis and picking this car up, plane tickets were like 60 bucks to St. Louis one way. The next day, when we actually decided to commit to do it, the plane tickets went up by 100 bucks each. So I could have gotten much cheaper plane tickets, but 330 bucks together. Now, before we actually flew to St. Louis, I had been talking to the owner and pretty much trying to figure out what was wrong with the car, what parts I needed to buy. According to the owner, it needed a control arm, it needed a brake caliper, possibly needed an ignition system, and it needed new wheels. So before even seeing the car, flying to St. Louis, I spent $682.90 in parts. Now that included all new ignition coils, plug wires, tie rods, a control arm, valve cover gasket, $100 worth of shifter bushings that I didn't even use because I bought all the wrong ones. The most expensive and most unfortunate part was that I had to buy new wheels for the car. I picked up these 3000 GT wheels for 350 bucks. Probably could have gotten a better deal than that, but we were in a time crunch. Those were the first wheels that I found that had the same bolt pattern, had the same hub size. After buying all those parts, flying to St. Louis, we still had to buy more stuff. I spent 34 bucks at AutoZone for an oil change and some fluids. I spent $119 at O'Reilly's for a brake caliper, more fluids. At this point, I don't even really remember. How did I spend $119 at there? I don't know. Oh, and then I had to go back to AutoZone, spend another $72. I spent $31.83 at Ace Hardware for our makeshift shifter bushing and tape measures to do the front end alignment. And that was pretty much all the money that we had spent in St. Louis. But as you know, the story continues. On the drive home, the car overheated numerous times, spilling its coolant all over the place. The first time it overheated, we stopped at Advanced Auto, spent $34 on coolant and a thermostat, made it like 15 miles to an O'Reilly's, then spent $89 on even more coolant, a radiator cap, and a overpriced funnel bleeder. And as we all know, that didn't fix anything, but we had thankfully bought enough coolant at O'Reilly's to make it all the way home. If you also remember that video, this car gets great gas mileage. For the entire trip home and all the driving we did in St. Louis, close to 800 miles probably, we only spent $111 on gas. So after all that spending, the car is finally home. To purchase the car and to get it home, it costs a total of $3,038.12. But wait, there's more. The car had a blown head gasket once we got it home. So I obviously had to buy a new head gasket. I had to get the head machined, but while I was in there, I tried to make as many improvements as possible. I replaced all the cooling system. I replaced the timing belt kit, all the tensioners. I got new gaskets for the intake manifold, the exhaust manifold. Let's take a break for a second to give a shout out to Rock Auto. Rock Auto is an awesome website, not sponsored, that you can buy parts for your car. Somehow they have name brand parts for super cheap. I bought an entire timing kit, a water pump, and all that stuff from Rock Auto for this car for $159, which on other websites, the timing belt itself was like 200 bucks. And this is a Gates water pump, Gates timing belt. So Rock Auto, if you ever need parts for cheap, check them out. I got all new belts for this thing, you know, like power steering belt, alternator belt, and AC belt. Just accessory belts. They were like less than $5 each. So yeah, there's that. I've been buying my aftermarket parts on Extreme PSI, which is a website that has parts for all sorts of cars, but a lot of parts for DSMs. I spent $192 there, which included the head gasket, some of the new hardware that I got for the motor, and some of the other miscellaneous gaskets like the turbo gasket and the exhaust manifold gasket. To get the head machined, pressure tested, all the lifters checked, and all that kind of stuff, it was 150 bucks. Slightly more expensive than most machine working is, but on these heads, you actually have to take all the valves out to machine the head because the intake valves stick past the actual deck of the head a little bit. I also had to spend $85.59 at Harbor Freight to get the leak down tester, but that's something I will use for the foreseeable future. Hopefully not too much, but I'll have it now. So to get the head fixed and the car running and driving as it is now, it was an additional $588.45. So in total, to purchase this car, fly to St. Louis, fix it, drive it back, replace the head gasket, $3,626.57. So I spent the entire price of the car, in addition to the price of the car, just getting it back here and fixing it. Before we had decided to actually fly there and try to drive it home, I had checked U-Haul. U-Haul was gonna be about $1,000 to get it back. I had checked Turo. Turo was going to be cheaper, but you're not technically supposed to tow with Turo trucks. That's a stupid new rule they added. I actually contacted some local transporters in St. Louis to see how much they would charge to transport the car down to here. Yet again, that was around $1,000. That in itself was cheaper than the additional 1,500 bucks I had to spend to get the car back. But keep in mind, I would have had to spend all the money on the parts anyway if I got the car transported down here. So flying to St. Louis, fixing the car, and driving it back was still either equal to or slightly cheaper than the other options. Plus I got to see my friends, plus I got to make some good memories, and plus got to make some good content. But all that bears the question, was it worth it? I now have a 1G Eclipse with some cool upgrades, 4G63T for $3,626. The car drives nicely, still have yet to floor it because I'm too scared, but it is ugly and it is definitely not in the best of condition. Now, before I had found this car, I had been looking for Eclipses for a while. I found one 2G Eclipse that was actually an NA 2G Eclipse, so GS, but someone had strapped a turbo on it. That guy was asking 2,500 bucks for that thing. That thing was a heap of crap. I'm pretty sure that real GSTs and GSXs are pretty pricey and pretty hard to come by nowadays. But I want to check it out. So let's go hop onto Facebook Marketplace and some other websites, see if we can find any Eclipse GSTs or GSXs for the same or for less than I spent on this thing. You guys are gonna get a nice taste of what I look at on Facebook Marketplace. Mazda B2200s and Miatas. Trust me, there's a method to my madness. Anyway, let's see Eclipse GST. There we go. Oh, there's actually a couple. Here's a 2G Eclipse GST. Nothing too special, doesn't look too bad though. Cons: needs a paint job, few cosmetic issues, new headliner. In terms of build wise, this is very similar to my car, except that's a 2G, and it's $6,000. So, I mean, mine was half that. Okay, all right, just feeling good. Here's another one, GST, Spider. Convertible. All right, that's pretty cool looking. A nice turbo manifold and such. He's asking 6,800 OBO. GS, RS, all the NA ones. Ooh, a 240, 9 grand. It's an automatic 1G, needs power steering and ball joints. Also, the back window was hit by a tree, and it's 1,500 bucks. The same price I bought mine for. Even though we had to put a bunch of money into the car, getting it back here and stuff, it's still a pretty good deal. Car market is obviously just ridiculously stupid right now, but DSMs are skyrocketing in value. I mean, they're getting pretty hard to come by and pretty sought after. I added up all I spent to get the Eclipse down here and running and driving. You want to make a guess?
Running and driving.
So as is, everything I spent.
Are we talking about just the Eclipse, or are we talking about like expenses on the trip?
Expenses on the trip, not food, but flight and parts.
But between 2,500 and 3 grand.
$30,626.
Wow.
Yeah. So over twice the price of the car.
How do you feel about that?
Well, so obviously it's rough because it was a $1,500 car, but I was just looking on Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and like all the GSTs are like 6 to 7 grand, and there's only 2 of them. And only one of them is running and driving.
But that's
It's a 2G, yeah. It's like a very similar thing where it needs paint, but has a few aftermarket parts on it. 2Gs are obviously more sought after.
I mean,
but I just, I think, I don't think it's a bad deal. I don't think necessarily it's a steal anymore, but I still think it's okay.
if it hadn't have blown up, it would have been.
Yeah.
But it blew up.
Well, it would have still been 3 grand just to get down here. It was 1,500 bucks just to get it down here.
Whatever, beat the shit out of it.
Yep. What do you guys think? Do you think $3,600 is a good deal for a 1G GST, or do you think it's a bad deal? Speaking about 1Gs, if anyone has one that you're parting out or something, let me know. I need to get some interior pieces, and I want to get a new transmission now. All right, maybe it's not. Maybe it wasn't a good deal. Oh well, it is what it is.